So I sort of have a confession to make that I've been wanting to tell you all for a while now, but I've been wasting money. Now, I'm not talking about wasting money on some big purchase that's obvious to point out. I'm talking about a combination of smaller everyday things that almost everyone watching this could be guilty of as well, at least at some point in their lives. And what I've learned is that sometimes it's actually an accumulation of these smaller purchases that can cause the biggest financial issues, because not only do these costs add up quickly and hurt our budgets, but they also just add clutter to our homes and take away our attention from spending money on what really matters and what really adds value to our lives. So over the past few months, I did a deep dive into my own budget, and in this video, I'm gonna share the 10 things that I've cut out completely and stopped wasting my money on, so that hopefully you can too. Now, item number 1 is going to be buying a new phone every year. And hear me out with this one, because obviously our smartphones are probably the one item that we use the most day in and day out. But the main reason that I decided I'm no longer upgrading to a new phone as often as I used to is because of how I relate my phone to time. Now, I've been learning to value my time very highly, and when it comes to my iPhone, I sort of discovered that it's more of a time liability rather than a time asset for me. I mean, we talk about assets and liabilities in terms of finances, but how we choose to spend our time is directly related to our income and our potential for building wealth. So I think it's important to view certain everyday items and how they either take away time or give time back to us. So for me personally, no matter how much willpower I think I have to resist picking up my iPhone to check email or Instagram or even my YouTube Studio app, I've just had to admit to myself that sometimes it's become hard to resist, and now I actually consider using my iPhone too much a really bad habit that I want to avoid, because the bottom line is that it causes me to waste too much time. Now, I've been reading and rereading a great book that I have here called Atomic Habits lately, and the one thing this book talks about for breaking a bad habit like using your phone too much is essentially to change your environment so the bad habit is not as easy to repeat. So to use my phone less, I've actually just been locking it away in a safe that's in my closet while I do work during the day, and I think that upgrading my phone to the newest model with all the latest and greatest features every single year or every 2 years, that would just encourage me to start up the bad habit of overusing it again. So that's why I'm actually perfectly fine keeping my current iPhone for the next 4 or 5 years, unless I somehow completely destroy the screen or Apple purposely slows it down to force me to upgrade. Now next, for the second and third items that I've cut out, they kind of go hand in hand, but I'm gonna focus on one thing first, and that is travel at full price. So I've obviously talked a lot about this before here on my channel and made a lot of credit card content, but one of the main reasons that I got into credit cards and points in the first place was because I wanted to travel to new places and experience new things, but I didn't really have the room in my budget to afford the prices for most flights and hotels. So around 4 or 5 years ago, I became really interested in the whole online community around using credit cards to earn points and miles that can then be redeemed for heavily discounted travel. And now in recent years, I've been able to go on trips and vacations to places like Puerto Rico, San Francisco, Miami, and many more to come, all on credit card points. Basically, I just stick to a budget and use certain credit cards for my normal everyday expenses instead of a debit card, and then I pay off my credit cards in full every month, and that allows me to maximize my points and miles that I earn. That way I can redeem them to either fully or at least partially cover my costs for a lot of my travel. Now, I won't get into too much detail here because there is a lot more to it than that, so just go subscribe down below to help support my channel and to learn more about this for free. But the trips that I've been on over the past few years since graduating from college would have cost me easily tens of thousands of dollars, and over my lifetime, as I continue to do this strategically, the savings are just going to continue, and hopefully I'll never have to pay full price for any travel again, because it can get very expensive. But that brings me to the third thing that I just don't buy anymore when I'm out traveling, and that would be souvenir t-shirts or really any other type of travel souvenir that just takes up space in my apartment. So anytime you visit a new place, there's going to be gift shops either at the hotel you're staying at, in the airport, or even just some random street that you're walking down. And my cool idea that I had when I first started traveling was that for each new place that I went to, I was going to buy a t-shirt as a souvenir so that I could later wear that shirt and think back to all the memories that I made on that trip. But eventually I realized that with those t-shirts, even though they only cost maybe 20 or 30 bucks each, they would just take up all the space in my closet. And when I was going through my closet late last year, I found shirts from maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and some of those shirts still had the tags attached, so that was just my sign to get rid of them and stop buying them entirely in the future. Now, I see other people do some similar things with buying mugs or drink glasses or magnets from all the places they're traveling to, but what my girlfriend and I decided to start doing is, instead of having all these souvenirs that would lay around and just clutter our apartment, now we just buy one small $10 Christmas ornament from each new place that we go to. That way, once per year, for the 1 month that our mini Christmas tree is up, we can go ahead and look at all those ornaments and have fun talking about what we did on all those trips. And to us, that just feels a bit more meaningful when we do that once per year around the holidays. So do what works for you when it comes to travel souvenirs, but don't feel like you have to buy all these material items to relive those trips, because all the memories, the stories, and the pictures that you have are much better, and they're also free. Then for item number 4 that I've stopped buying is something a bit more general that applies to a lot of things, and that would be items on sale. Now let me explain, because to me, the important thing to understand with sale items is the difference between buying something on sale versus buying something because it's on sale. So notice the wording that I use there, buying something on sale versus something because it's on sale. And I mean, sales can seem like a really great way to save money at first, but really when stores do some sort of a 20% off promotion, for example, what they're really trying to do is get you to spend by making that purchase easier to justify in your mind. So even when something costs $200 and it's marked down on sale to $160, and that basically gets you to buy it, you have to make the connection that you're not saving $40, you're still spending $160, meaning that you're now a net minus $160 in your bank account thanks to the sale, and that's money that can be used for a lot of other things. So I stopped doing that, and now when I'm considering buying something that's on sale, I always ask myself the question, was I planning on buying this item in the first place? Now a perfect example of this was just a couple of months ago when I bought a new MacBook Pro. So I knew this was going to cost around $2,000, but it's for my business and helps to generate revenue, so it's absolutely worth the cost for me as a tool to produce things instead of consume them. But when I went over to Best Buy to make that purchase, it turns out they were running a special promotion where that specific MacBook Pro was on sale for $200 off for a limited time. Now really, I just lucked out on the timing of the sale because I already saved up and planned to make this larger purchase, and I fully anticipated dropping $2,000 on this computer. So for me, that $200 off was a really good deal where yes, I did spend $1,800, but basically I already accounted for it in my budget for months in advance, and now I got to save $200 so I could go ahead and use that to spend on other expenses or just save and invest it. But for someone else who maybe just walked into a Best Buy for fun to look around and then they saw this deal going on, that sale might make them think to themselves, wow, that's a great deal right now, and now that I think about it, I could use a MacBook upgrade. So then they buy it because it's on sale, even though they had no original intention of spending that money. So that word intention is really important to me when it comes to budgeting and spending, especially if you're using credit cards like I talk a lot about here on my channel, because they specifically can make it really easy to spend unintentionally. And something else that goes along with this is the idea of impulse purchases, which are the fifth thing that I stopped wasting money on. So sales are just one way that companies can get you to buy on impulse, and two other big ways are scarcity and time. Now a perfect example of this could be something like Amazon Prime Day, which just happened the other month, and for some reason there actually seemed to be a lot of hype specifically around Prime Day this year. But what exactly does Amazon do when they have this event going on? Well, I mean, they tell you what specific items are going on sale and when, and then they also tell you there's only a certain number of items available, which adds to scarcity. Plus Prime Day only lasts for 2 days, so of course you better prepare because you don't want to miss out on that new tablet or new air fryer or something ridiculous like that. But when you take a step back, it's really just one big marketing trick to get people to spend money with impulse purchases, and this year they almost got me with it too. I saw some crazy good deal where I was going to be able to get one of those cool looking Amazon Echo devices with a screen on it for only like 20 bucks when they retail for around 130 or something like that. So that seemed like it was going to be a steal because I also had an Amazon gift card balance that would cover the $20 price tag after Amazon Prime Day discounts. But then I realized that I had to just take a step back. Now scarcity and time constraints can make it difficult for a lot of people to do this, but I've learned to just wait around 24 hours before making a purchase because now I can really think about it and if I need it. And if I still want to buy it a whole day later, then maybe it does solve a problem for me and it's worth the money. So after thinking about that Amazon Echo device, I realized that even at 20 bucks, there was literally no point at all for me to have this, and it was just going to collect dust on my kitchen counter. Now that's just me, and maybe to you this is a useful device, but the point here is that you can't be falling for these impulse buy marketing tricks. Just take a step back and give it 24 hours or even a week for larger purchases to decide if you really need it. And if you do, then that's great, but at least you're putting some more intention behind your spending like I just talked about. All right, now moving on to the sixth thing that I stopped wasting my money on, and that is going to be going out for lunch at work. Now back before working remotely started for me in 2020, I was in an office building for my job 5 days a week in Old City, Philadelphia, actually right across the street from Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. And during the busy times of the year, or if I was just too lazy to pack my own lunch, I would walk around that area of the city to grab some food in the middle of the day, maybe a couple of times a week. So I'd go to places like Chipotle or this one food court that was right by all those historical landmarks in Philly. But what I found was that not only were these takeout options all kind of unhealthy, but the prices really started to add up as well, especially since I was in a city. So eventually I started cutting it down to eating out maybe once a week for lunch and then once every 2 weeks. And that's because it's not all bad to eat out for lunch, but I just did not want to make it an everyday habit. Now what I did instead is I just cooked in bulk maybe a couple of times a week with some healthier food options like chicken with rice and some other things like that. And then of course, when remote work started in 2020 and has continued for me to this day, now it's a lot easier to not eat out as much because the temptation isn't really there. All right, now next here for item number 7 that I cut out, this is going to be one that I think a lot of people also don't really need that much in the year 2022 and beyond, and that is cable TV. Now currently I am subscribed to Hulu for live TV so that I can watch things like Philly sports games when they're on TV with the Eagles and the Sixers, but I realized that other than that, I really wasn't watching regular TV that much anymore. Half of that comes down to just not having that much time for TV, and the other half is because when I do want to watch something, I usually know exactly what that is, so I just flip over to Netflix to turn something on. But I also watch a ton of YouTube as entertainment / work, and I've been a big fan of YouTube pretty much since I was like 11 or 12 years old. So yeah, traditional cable TV really isn't worth it for me anymore, so I've just cut it out. And I know many others like my parents that have done the same thing recently. Then next, the number 8 thing that I've stopped wasting my money on is brand name items. Now you can probably tell from watching my YouTube videos that I just like wearing these plain shirts, and that's really because it's what I've grown to prefer over the past few years with this sort of minimal look. I don't really like wearing logos or words on my clothes if I can avoid that. That probably also explains why I wasn't wearing the souvenir shirts that I talked about before. Plus, usually with clothing, you're paying a lot for the brand names that you're wearing and not the actual item of clothing itself. So I just try to find some plain clothes that are good quality and fit well, and that's worked for me. And wearing more minimal stuff also makes it a lot easier to not follow any fashion trends. And the truth is, I don't know that much about fashion anyway, so that's my excuse, is that I just keep it simple. Now, not buying brand name things goes for other areas of my spending too, so I'm always buying store brand foods and store brand cleaning supplies and stuff like that because it's basically the same exact thing. Generic prescription and over-the-counter drugs and other medicines like that is also what I lean towards when that's an option. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, my simple buying strategy is just to plan out my spending in my budget, go to the store, and then pretty much just ignore sales and impulse purchases to buy store brand or minimal looking stuff with a credit card, and then I pay that all off on time and in full. Obviously, that's easier said than done, and sometimes I'll buy stuff outside of that, but overall, I think that's a good general guideline for people to use to save money and to keep clutter down at the same time. Now, when I go to the grocery store, the 9th item on my list that I've cut out completely is going to be frozen and junk foods. So this one should be pretty self-explanatory, but I do try to eat healthy when I can, and that just involves eating fresh foods and whole foods whenever possible. A good general rule of thumb is that the less ingredients a food item has, the better it probably is for you. So if you read the ingredients for chicken, it's just gonna say chicken, and the only ingredient for broccoli is just broccoli. And frozen food or pre-cooked meals that you have to heat up are generally not that healthy because usually they're loaded with preservatives and they have a ton of sodium that you don't really need. And at the end of the day, they can get pretty pricey too, so you'll probably save some money on your groceries if you buy good, clean, real foods in bulk instead. You can always freeze what you don't cook before the expiration date, or you can refrigerate any leftovers that you do cook. And I've learned that's a much better way to eat instead of microwave meals or frozen pizza and bagel bites or whatever else I was eating back in college or 5 or 10 years ago. Then the 10th item that I've stopped wasting my money on now is going to be supplements. Now, the one and only exception for me on this one is going to be a whey protein supplement that I use. And I use that for protein shakes after I go to the gym every day for all those gains and stuff like that, because otherwise I just don't get enough protein in my diet. But I've cut out things like pre-workout supplements, fish oil, and all these other supplements that I've tried over the years. Now, I decided to cut these out of my budget because first of all, I was probably spending over $100 per month on these supplements, but now I just drink a bottle of water when I wake up and then some coffee in the morning as a pre-workout before I go to the gym. And again, I eat more whole foods now, so instead of fish oil, I just eat fish more regularly. Or I'll try to eat more vegetables when I can, or other healthy foods, instead of trying to figure out the best vitamins and other supplements to take. Now, I know that for some people, supplements can be necessary, so I'm not saying you have to cut them out yourself, but this is just kind of what worked for me, so I've been able to save money by doing this, and I still feel very healthy with what I am eating. But cutting stuff from your budget, like some of the things I talked about in this video, all starts with budgeting in the first place. So go check out this video over here next if you want the free budgeting template that I use, or go check out this video over here if you want to learn from the 5 biggest budgeting mistakes that I myself had to fix over the years. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.